Hey everyone, and welcome to Walk and Talk. On today's episode, we have a true industry insider, and what I mean by that is somebody who has a perspective on the industry that almost nobody else has. And this person is Chelsey Boll, who is in fact both a very successful model and a fashion photographer. And Chelsey's going to share with us some really incredible insights about what she sees in the industry from both ends of the spectrum. And I think this is a message that you're not going to get anywhere else. And she's got some really incredible tidbits of information that I know that you can take and immediately change your level of photography based on our conversation. I'm going to meet Chelsey, the insider, inside this mall. So here we are in the center of fashion in Toronto, Yorkville, and you're really in the center of the fashion industry here in Canada, being both a model and a fashion photographer. And it's a really unique thing because people are usually one or the other. How did you end up in this very specific or particular predicament?
I started as a model, and photography kind of happened naturally from trying to build my own portfolio, build my friends' portfolios for them. And eventually I started taking photography a lot more seriously.
At what age? Did this start out really young for you, or?
Yeah, I started taking modeling classes when I was about 9 years old.
Oh,
the photo shoots.
They offer modeling at 9 years old. That's incredible.
Modeling classes. So
Right.
I was learning a lot more about self-confidence, how to, good posture, how to interact with people.
Right.
How to walk on a runway as a 9-year-old.
How to social media.
Yeah, well, not quite yet. And then just around the age of 14, we started working on actually portfolio building.
Right.
And that's when we started, my friends and I started teaming up, and we would just shoot each other back and forth. And when my parents bought me my first DSLR, those shoots started to get a lot better, and I started to take it a lot more seriously, and everything kind of blew up from there. Eventually people started offering me money, and I considered it as a career choice.
So when you hear someone's backstory, we often see that their rise looks meteoric. It looks like, the path to success was quite linear and quick, but that's not often the case. It's often a little bit more difficult than that, and there's a lot of hurdles. I can imagine for you there were some. What were those for you?
For me, I guess photography was never really my obvious path. I was pursuing science up until the moment my mental health physically didn't let me anymore. And I started getting some pretty serious panic attacks that actually eventually prevented me from even applying to universities.
Wow.
And so I took that time off, focused on my health, and in that time found my art. And I just kept rolling from there.
I think a lot of people discover that, it's in those times of adversity when real opportunity presents itself, right?
Yeah.
Like when that door opens, it's your responsibility to sort of take it. And did you find that was a real guiding moment for you, sort of a watershed moment?
100%. I've actually always been thankful for that, for my body guiding me in that way, for preventing me from pursuing that science path, which looking back was so wrong for me. I'm so fulfilled now in my artistic endeavors that I'm really thankful for the whole experience.
So fast forward to today, you are both a working model and a working photographer, and what's unique is that there are models who have become photographers and quite successfully, but you are in the unique position that you are doing both still concurrently. And I would imagine that if I was an aspiring fashion photographer or a portrait photographer, that you would have some really cool insights into that world that I could actually use for my photography that I'm not familiar with. What are some of those insights?
Of course, I think that my insight really expands into just how a model feels on set. I know what it's like to walk into the room as the model and to feel kind of vulnerable, to feel a little bit lost, to feel confused. And what I would say to photographers to make models feel better in that position is to just, from the second they walk in the door, make sure you're already starting to give them some direction. You just, you walk up, you introduce yourself, you introduce everybody else on set, You let them know what you're doing today and what you need from them later on, but also right in the moment. You know, you can head over to makeup here. You can hang tight for a second here.
Right.
That goes a long way for creating comfort for the rest of the shoot.
Because it's really about developing a relationship early on and getting on some sort of common ground too, right? Like, I think that so much of photography is really, when you see magical photography happen, it's the relationship between that photographer and
Yes.
the person they're photographing. And so what you're saying is, like, it doesn't start when the model is ready. It starts when the model walks in the room.
It starts the second you meet the model. The second she walks in the room, the energy of the studio, the energy, you know, maybe the music you're having or the people you have around, even the team you choose is really important.
Yeah. Now, in terms of like working with photographers, that, you know, in terms of direction and style, is there anything that you've noticed from being on both sides of the camera in terms of what works well, what, you know, direction that you can give a model, or what direction as a model feels great to take? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, of course. As most people know, a bit of positive reinforcement goes a long way. You know, don't necessarily say if you don't like something, but when they do something great, let them know. If you don't really love it, let them do it for a minute. It's good for the confidence.
Yeah.
And then move on from it positively.
Yeah.
When they do something amazing, really, really, like, let them know. That's great, I love this, let's keep doing this. How about you just bring your chin down a little bit more?
So in terms of the planning that you do, I know that some photographers have different methodologies. Some use extensive lookbook images and reference images, and others will use none. And some will take those images and they'll bring them to set and go so far as to like show the model and say, I just want you to do this pose, just do this.
Yeah.
So for you, what does your pre-production process look like, and then how does that get translated all the way to set? How do you plan your shoots?
Yeah. Pre-production, I usually start with some form of inspiration, whether that's from a client, from the model, or even a location I've seen somewhere.
Yeah.
Then I do develop a mood board. I look for lots of inspiration. Sometimes it's a more simple idea and I can find very similar photos and great, you know, a very straightforward a mood board from there. And sometimes it's a bit more complicated and I have to pull colors and textures and random things and try to create a mood with that, like a real mood with that.
Yeah.
But usually after talking to my team, often on the phone, we'll pass some ideas back and forth and the mood board will develop from there. I rarely bring it onto set. I like to adapt to the energy that my team is bringing me in the room on that day.
Yeah.
And often it goes pretty far from the mood board.
Yeah.
If I'm shooting for a client, of course, the mood board will make it onto set,
Yes.
but for more creative purposes, or if the client is really feeling creative, then we just resign ourselves to whatever's going on that day. If we're on location and we see something exciting and new and weird, we roll with it.
And so you're saying that mood boards really help you in the planning process to decide on location, decide on wardrobe, to decide on just general aesthetic, mood, color tone, color palette.
Yeah.
But once you're on there, that planning has already been done. So now you can just freeform it.
Precisely. Then you're ready to create. And I don't like to put myself in too much of a box in terms of what I'm going to create. And I don't like to put anyone else in a box.
Right.
We kind of let intuition take over, and that's when the real magic happens.
So speaking about being on set, it's, you know, the set environment is a really cool place to be because it's often, you know, lots of energy and a lot of fun, or, you know, it could be a lot of different things. What are you doing on set to kind of create an energy that really makes the team happy and makes everybody sort of synergistic?
I think music is a really obvious one. A lot of people know. I don't know if everyone does this. I like to tailor my music to whatever the vibe is for the shoot that day.
Right.
And I also like to create sort of a family with the team that I'm working with. I have my regular go-to makeup artists and stylists, so when you're coming into our space, to our studio, you get that warm environment feeling and you just feel like you're joining our family for the day. We dance around and we have a good time.
And I think that's really the key, right? I mean, we see this in film with directors always working with the same cinematographers, is that, you know, it goes the same in the photography business, that you want to work with people that are almost just become your friends, so that when you show up on set, you don't have to reteach them anything. It's like, yeah, I know that you like that, so I'm just going to go right there and do that. Is that what you're finding? Is that it just makes it also, it's not just this familial environment, but it also just makes it a more efficient set. Is that
definitely more efficient? We all come to an understanding of each other, and after a while, the trust that we build really adds to the creative process because I don't feel like I have to watch and micromanage, and they feel more passionate about the project.
So speaking of style, I know that with your photography and its unique style, a lot of it doesn't just come from how you edit your photos, but it comes from like the expressiveness of your models that you're shooting, and that's something that stood out to me before and really makes your images memorable. Talk to me a little bit about that style and about how you developed that style.
I don't necessarily love to put them in a specific pose. I like when they continue to move and flow. So when it comes to posing, that's usually my guidance, but sometimes I take that a step further. And sometimes I just give them a full-on action, or if we're on location, without really giving them that much time to think, I'm gonna say, okay, you and I are gonna go for a walk in this direction, and I want you to give me this mood. I want you to be very fierce, or I want you to be bored, and I'll just move with them with my prime lens on. So I have to get creative, and I'm moving with them, and they're feeling my energy, and I end up with weird angles that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise, and they end up doing things that they probably wouldn't have just stationary. Yeah. And sometimes I like to push the envelope a little bit more and shoot until it's kind of awkward, yeah, just past where you're comfortable. And there's a really good moment there that's real.
That's exactly my methodology for these walk and talk things, is I just push it to the point of awkwardness until it gets real.
I'm always there.
Yeah, speaking of which, let's keep walking. So there is this whole idea that style and this all is influenced from something. Like you would have had to have gotten this from some type of influence. What are your influences in terms of how you developed that style, or how you developed even the idea of getting people in motion? Where did that come from?
I don't think it necessarily came from other photographers or work that I'd seen so much as being on sets and what I liked and what made me feel comfortable and brought out unique things from my own body and self that I didn't know I had in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to sort of how you edit your images, do you have an aesthetic that you prefer over other aesthetics, or a style that you prefer?
I don't consciously prefer it, but I remember in art school, my art teacher really drilled into me to really like increase the contrast. And I think that really came into my photography style without me really meaning for it to, but I like it.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that now too, right? We're seeing this walk away from this low-con images that we saw maybe 5 years ago. People are now more embracing contrast and deeper blacks and things like that. So yeah, it's cool to see that evolve across the board. Hey, this is awesome. We got lucky. It was a great day, and I know that you often are quite busy because you have 2 jobs. I only have 1. So I will let you go, but thank you so much for taking the time, and my best to you.
Thank
Goodbye.
You.